And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. We are live. Welcome to Benchley Night. Except it's not going to be Benchley Night tonight. It's going to be C. Northcote Parkinson Night. Now, you might say, why, Charles? Why C. Northcote Parkinson? Why not Robert Benchley? And you would sound a lot like my house cats. You'd sound a lot like our good friends Charbonneau and York, who are like, why open that door to outside that is cold and wet? Why not open that door to outside that is warm and sunny? Why C. Northcote Parkinson? Why not Robert Benchley? Because, ladies and gentlemen, because last week, Rockingham for Progress, we had a meeting. It wasn't a meeting, it was a forum. We are trying to be very transparent with our efforts to save the Miss Bellows Falls Diner. And ladies and gentlemen, we have been working with an excellent designer, and we've come up with a design we thought was wonderful. And the day before we were going to do our public presentation, the day before that was going to happen, Preservation Trust, our friends at Preservation Trust of Vermont, who administered the National Park Service grant, said, oh, the National Park Service will never go for those plans. And we said, why not, our friends at Preservation Trust of Vermont? And they said, the National Park Service wishes your design to be subservient to the pre-existing structure. And they apparently, the design was not felt to be subservient. So we soldiered on anyway. We had the meeting at the library. We said, this is not going to be what the design looks like. This was our idea, but it's going to be different. The local newspaper ran a story. 126 people felt that they had a need to comment about what idiots we were, about how now and again the state gets it right, about how, well, just basically how we were fools. At the next day, the local newspaper ran a story about how the town of Wilmington, Vermont, was going to extend its water lines a couple of miles further, and their local water superintendent said that he did not think that that was wise. This is a multi-million-dollar project, big project. Water, very important to people. It got about 3 comments. Ladies and gentlemen, and I was thinking, why does that happen? And I was remembering back when I was a mere strip of a lad, my dad introduced me to the writings of C. Northcote Parkinson, best known today for Parkinsons Law, which is, hey, Will, my brother Will is here. Will probably remembers C. Northcote Parkinson and Dad's fondness for Parkinson's Law, which is that work fills available time. No matter how much work you've got to do or how little work you've got to do, the amount of time you have, it'll take all that time. Anyway, so he was a British naval historian who also sort of dabbled in kind of the behavior of organizations. And he wrote this book, Parkinson's Law. And there's an essay that came to mind when it occurred to me just why everyone got so het up about whether or not you're going to be able to see the cook cooking your home fries. Hey, it's my very tall cousin. He's here. People are here. It's lovely to have you all here, ladies and gentlemen. And we have a few people to thank. We're raising money, obviously, tonight for the Miss Bellows Falls Diner project. And a few people have stepped up, and we thank them very, very much. And the unidentified, unlit in the can would like to say thank you to them. So first off, a man who has ordered his Miss Bellows Falls coffee mug, and you should too, ladies and gentlemen. You should too. You need a Miss Bellows Falls coffee mug. It makes coffee taste so much better, as he pointed out. Our good friend, Mr. John T. Wilhelm. One of my favorite artists, who just put up on Facebook a painting that she did a few years ago that I'd never seen of a very, very large pig. I liked it very, very much. Our good friend, Miss Catherine Fisher, down there in Mandeville, Louisiana, a town immortalized by Miss Lucinda Williams, a painter friend, a wonderful human being, our good friend, Ms. Holly Hegeman, out there in St. Louis, but I think heading out on a trip again very, very soon. Our excellent, the redoubtable Miss Terry Hudson. Facebook users, where the heck do I sign in to be with others? I think Facebook user, you should go to the Charlie Hunter page on Facebook, as opposed to like the Roots on the Rails Alumni Association page on Facebook, which is where I think you are, or the Charlie Hunter art page on Facebook. That's my suggestions anyway. And a good friend of Facebook user out there in Saxons River, Vermont, Ms. Martha Rowley, and in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I have not been following his beloved baseball team. How are they doing? How are they doing, my very, very, very tall cousin, Mr. Nat Hunter? How are the Pittsburgh Pirates doing? Last week, they were undefeated. But Mr. Nat Hunter, his wonderful wife, Elise, and their little tiny dog, Ginger. Whoa! Very tall cousin says the Pirates are 8-2. My goodness, if they do that well, I'm not going to be able to ever watch their games, because I want to watch a team that has no chance whatsoever. It's my kind of team. Anyway, hey, Geraldine has a copy of the original C. Northcote Parkinson book. That's cool. All right. Hey, Facebook user, have you managed to sign in over on my page? We'll see. Anyway, time for the reading. This isn't picking corn for Phyllis. Have I told you guys about that? That was an expression that my grandmother used, and then my mother used. Maternal was obviously maternal grandmother and my mother, our mother. And this isn't picking corn for Phyllis meant this is not accomplishing anything. This is not getting anything done. It's, as you're sitting and you've talked with someone for half an hour and you need to get going, you say, well, this isn't picking corn for Phyllis. And my brother and I both, I believe, when the internet came along, we were like, where did that expression come from? And we Googled it independently. It's not on the internet. I don't know if my grandmother knew a Phyllis who she needed to be picking corn for. If anyone has ever heard of this isn't picking corn for Phyllis, talk to us. Hey, Martha Rowley is finally here. Let's everyone welcome Martha Rowley. Welcome, Martha. All right. Okay, so this, ladies and gentlemen, this essay, I believe, is why we got 150 responses about what the seating pattern should be at the Miss Bellows Falls Diner rebuild. Now, and let me just say, the diner itself is going to be preserved. Nothing's going to happen to the diner. Just trying to get a few more seats so it can survive in this competitive world that we're in. But everyone had an opinion about that. No one had an opinion about the multi-million-dollar extension to the sewer and water line. Here's why. High finance or the point of vanishing interest. People who understand high finance are of two kinds: those who have vast fortunes of their own and those who have nothing at all. To the actual millionaire, $1 million is something real and comprehensible. To the applied mathematician and the lecturer in economics, assuming both to be practically starving, $1 million is at least as real as 1,000, they having never possessed either sum. But the world is full of people who fall in between these two categories, knowing nothing of millions, but well accustomed to thinking of thousands. And it is of these that finance committees are mostly comprised. The result is a phenomenon that has often been observed, but never yet been investigated. It might be termed the law of triviality, and that is actually, ladies and gentlemen, the way it is referred to on Wikipedia, the law of triviality. Briefly stated, it means that, and if anyone who's ever served on a committee is going to recognize this, ladies and gentlemen, briefly stated, it means that the time spent on any item of the agenda will be in inverse proportion to the sum involved. On second thought, the statement that this law has never been investigated is not entirely accurate. Some work has actually been done in this field, but the investigators pursued a line of inquiry that led them nowhere. They assumed that the greatest significance should attach to the order in which items on the agenda are taken. They assumed further that most of the available time will be spent on items 1 through 7, and that the later items will be allowed automatically to pass. The result is well known. Derision with which Dr. Guggenheim's lecture was received at the Brickworth conference may have been thought excessive at the time, but all further discussions on this topic have tended to show that his critics were right. Years have been wasted in a research of which the basic assumptions were wrong. We realize now the position on the agenda is actually a minor consideration, so far at least as this problem is concerned. We consider also that Dr. Guggenheim was lucky to escape as he did in his underwear. Had he dared to put his lame conclusions before the later conference in September, he would have faced something more than just derision. The view would have been taken that he was deliberately wasting people's time. If we are to make further progress in this investigation, we must ignore all that has so far been done. We must start at the beginning and understand fully the way in which a finance committee actually works. For the sake of the general reader, this can be put in dramatic form thus. Chairman, we now come to item 9. Our treasurer, Mr. McPhail, will report. Mr. McPhail, the estimate for the atomic reactors before you, sirs, set forth in Appendix H of the subcommittee's report. You will see that the general design and layout has been approved by Professor McFishin. The total cost will amount to $10 million. The contractors, Messrs. McNabb and McHash, consider that the work should be commenced and then completed by April of 1959. Mr. McPhee, the consulting engineer, warns us that we should not count on completion before October at the earliest. In this view, he is supported by Dr. McHeap, the well-known geophysicist, who refers to the probable need for piling at the lower end of the site. The plan of the main building is before you, see Appendix 9, and the blueprint is laid upon the table. I shall be glad to give any further information that members of this committee may require. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. McPhail, for your very lucid explanation of the plan as proposed. I will now invite the members present to give us their views. It is necessary to pause at this point and consider what views the members are likely to have. Let us suppose that they number 11, including the chairman, but excluding the secretary. Of these 11 members, 4, including the chairman, do not really know what a reactor is. Of the remainder, 3 do not know what it is for. Of those who know its purpose, only 2 have the least idea of what it should cost. One of these is Mr. Isaacson, the other is Mr. Brickworth. Either is in a position to say something. We may suppose that Mr. Isaacson is the first to speak. Mr. Isaacson. Well, Mr. Chairman, I could wish that I felt more confidence in our contractors and consultant had we gone to Professor Levi in the first instance, and had the contract been given to Messrs. David and Goliath, I should have been happier about the whole scheme. Mr. Lyon Daniels would not have wasted our time with wild guesses about the probable delay in completion, and Dr. Moses Bulrush would have told us definitively whether piling would be needed or not. Chairman, I am sure we all appreciate Mr. Isaacson's anxiety to complete this work in the best possible way. I feel, however, that it is rather late in the day to call in new technical advisors. I admit that the main contract has still to be signed, but we have already spent very large sums. If we reject the advice for which we have paid, we shall have to pay as much again. Other members murmur in agreement. Mr. Isaacson. Well, I should like my observation to be minuted. Chairman. Certainly. Perhaps Mr. Brickworth also has something to say on this matter? Now, Mr. Brickworth is almost the only man there who knows what he is talking about. There is a great deal he could say. He distrusts this round figure of $10 million. Why should it come out to exactly that? Why do they need to demolish the old building in order to make room for the new approach? Why is so large a sum set aside for contingencies? And who is McKeep, anyway? Is he the man who was sued last year by the Trickle and Dried Up Oil Corporation? But Brickworth does not know where to begin. The other members could not read the blueprint if he referred to it. He would have to begin by explaining what a reactor is, and no one there would admit that he did not already know. It's just better to say nothing. Mr. Brickworth. I have no comment to make. Chairman. Does any other member wish to speak? Very well. I may take it then that the plans and estimates are approved. Thank you. May I now sign the main contract on your behalf? Murmur of agreement. Thank you. We can now move on to item 10. Allowing a few seconds for rustling papers and unrolling diagrams, the time spent on item 9 will have been just 2 minutes and a half. The meeting is going well. But some members feel a bit uneasy about item 9. They wonder inwardly whether they've really been pulling their weight. It is too late to query that reactor scheme, but they would like to demonstrate before the meeting ends that they are alive to all that is going on. Chairman, item 10, bicycle shed for the use of the clerical staff. An estimate has been received from Messrs. Badger and Woodworm, who undertake to complete the work for the sum of $2,350. Plans and specifications are before you, gentlemen. Mr. Softly. Surely, Mr. Chairman, this sum is excessive. I note that the roof is to be of aluminum. Would not asbestos be cheaper? Mr. Holdfast. I agree with Mr. Softly about the cost, but the roof should, in my opinion, be of galvanized iron. I incline to think that the shed could be built for $2,000 or even less. Mr. Daring. I would go further, Mr. Chairman. I question whether this shed is really necessary at all. We do too much for our staff as it is. They are never satisfied. That is the trouble. They will be wanting garages next. Mr. Holdfast. No, I can't support Mr. Daring on that occasion. I think the shed is needed. It's a question of material and cost. The debate is fairly launched. A sum of $2,350 is well within everybody's comprehension. Everyone can visualize a bicycle shed. Discussion goes on, therefore, for 45 minutes, with the possible result of saving some $300. Members at length sit back with a feeling of achievement. Chairman, item 11, refreshments supplied at meetings of the Joint Welfare Committee, monthly, $4.75. Mr. Softly. What type of refreshment is supplied on these occasions? Chairman. Coffee, I understand. Mr. Holdfast. And this means an annual charge of, let me see, $57? Chairman. That is so. Mr. Daring. Well, really, Mr. Chairman, I question whether this is justified. How long do these meetings last? Now begins an even more acrimonious debate. There may be members of the committee who might fail to distinguish between asbestos and galvanized iron, but every person there knows about coffee, what it is, how it should be made, where it should be bought, and whether indeed it should be bought at all. This item on the agenda will occupy the members for an hour and a quarter, and they will end by asking the secretary to procure further information, leaving the matter to be decided at the next meeting. It would be natural to ask at this point whether a still smaller sum, $20 say, or $10, would occupy the Finance Committee for proportionately longer time. On this point, it must be admitted, we are still ignorant. Our tentative conclusion must be that there is a point at which the whole tendency is reversed. The committee members concluding that the sum is beneath their notice. Research has still to establish the point at which this reversal occurs. The transition from the $50 debate, an hour and a quarter, to the $20 debate, 2.5 minutes, is indeed an abrupt one. It would be the more interesting to establish the exact point at which this occurs. More than that, it would be of practical value. Supposing, for example, that the point of vanishing interest is represented by the sum of $35. The treasurer, with an item of $62.80 on the agenda, might well decide to present it as two items, one of $30 and the other of $32.80, with an evident saving of time and effort. Conclusions at this juncture can be merely tentative, but there is some reason to suppose that the point of vanishing interest represents the sum of the individual committee members, the sum that the individual committee member is willing to lose on a bet or subscribe to for a charity. An inquiry on these lines, conducted on racecourses and in Methodist chapels, might go far towards solving the problem. Far greater difficulty may be encountered in attempting to discover the exact point at which the sum involved becomes too large to discuss at all. One thing apparent, however, is that the time spent on $10 million and on $10 may well turn out to be the same. The present estimated time of 2.5 minutes is by no means exact, but there is clearly a space of time, something between 2 and 4.5 minutes, which suffices equally for the largest and the smallest sums. Much further investigation remains to be done, but the final results, when published, cannot fail to be of absorbing interest and immediate value to mankind. All right, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Thank you for joining us. The Finance Committee delving into the nuclear reactor and the bicycle shed. I think that is very instructive about human behavior. Though, of course, I mean, with the diner, people care about the diner. I mean, everybody likes to go and have, have eggs over easy and home fries. And we're going to do it, ladies and gentlemen. Buy a mug. They make your coffee taste so much better. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great week. It'll be a couple of weeks till the next Benchley night. I got to go out to Saskatchewan. But I'll see. Catch you on the flip-flop, as we used to say. Bye-bye.